Welcome to the special edition of the Fast Lane. Trey Lyle here with you. I'm joined by Damon Dillmon once again from CavsCorner.com talking UVA versus William and Mary, kicking off the season for the Cavaliers. And Damon, let's just jump right into it. Obviously, Mike London, second time coming back since losing his job with the Cavaliers. He's got a talented team despite, the 1-2 in the fall season, but this is an FCS opponent, so expectations are for Virginia to roll. What are your initial thoughts about what you want to see from Virginia as they come out in game one?
Yeah, I think this is going to be a good way to get a better sense of a lot of the questions that we had talked about last week. A lot, whether it's who's going to get the work at running back, how is Brennan Armstrong going to look at quarterback in terms of maybe a more efficient, more accurate quarterback, cut down on those turnovers, and then defensively, what does the defense look like for starters? How are they using those extra defensive backs? Are they leaning on those sub packages with a fifth or maybe even sixth defensive back the way we kind of suspect they will, or are they going to kind of sit on that stuff and keep it vanilla because they don't want to show too much to Illinois and especially Carolina in a couple of weeks down the road? But yeah, I think this is our first real opportunity to start to get answers to some of those lingering questions about this team. I think there are a lot of things that we feel like we have a pretty good sense of going into this season, but there are still some questions that need to be answered. What do the wide receivers look like without Lavelle Davis at the moment? What does Dontavion Wicks look like now healthy? How do they get Jelani Woods involved? Because I know there's a lot of excitement about what he could bring to the tight end spot this year. So I'm just really interested in getting a first real look at this team and starting to get answers to some of those questions and starting to get a better idea of what they have in some of these guys who we're not quite as familiar with. So Saturday night's going to be a great opportunity to start filling in some of those blanks.
Yeah, what have you seen from the team? We kind of touched on it last week, but they're going to deal with a really good quarterback for William Mary, especially on the FCS level, despite the record. This guy's got a lot of experience coming in, even though he's technically a true sophomore given the COVID year. His mobility is going to be a big thing. What do you want to see in the defense from the mobile quarterback? Obviously Mathis, is the quarterback for William & Mary.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see, first of all, if Mathis actually plays. Mike London said earlier this week that he may be kind of a game time decision. He's a little banged up. He's working his way back from some injury stuff. And the way Mike London made it sound was that they maybe don't want to sacrifice him and rush him back for this game and jeopardize the bigger picture, the season as a bigger picture. So the problem becomes if Hollis Mathis doesn't play, the number 2 guy on the depth chart is a true freshman named Darius Wilson, who we know virtually nothing about. So then it gets really interesting because this is a veteran UVA defense, and regardless of who the quarterback is for William & Mary, whether it's Mathis, whether it's Wilson, I'd be interested to see, number one, what kind of penetration the defensive line gets for UVA. I know there's a lot of expectation there. Again, there's veterans all over this UVA football team, but defensive line is one of those spots where Aaron Famui is back after opting out last year. He's one of the nose tackles in the mix, along with Jameer Carter. Mandy Alonso is a fifth-year senior. Adib Atawari is another one. He's a sixth-year guy if you include his career at JMU before these last 2 years as a grad transfer here at UVA. So I'd be interested to see just how they get after the quarterback and how they contain that, because Nick Howell, the defensive coordinator here at UVA, talked during the preseason about how he thinks everybody in the ACC has a running quarterback and how they benefited from practicing against Brennan Armstrong, how they benefited from practicing against the speed of backup quarterback Ira Armstead. And this is another tune-up in that regard. Hollis Mathis, if he plays, is a threat as a dual threat guy. He can do both. Obviously, he's shown that in his year in a couple of games at William & Mary. So this is a really good opportunity, again, to see how this defense handles a guy who can beat you in a variety of ways. Again, provided Mathis plays, because this could be a good opportunity to tune things up from a defensive standpoint going into the meat of the schedule.
This is obviously a game where you expect a lot of the depth for Virginia to kind of show out. I mean, let's be frank here. This is a 1-2 team, despite returning all starters, that was picked 11th out of 12 in the CAA. Granted, the CAA is a really deep FCS football conference. JMU obviously at the top. Richmond's in there, who's a playoff contender. Delaware, who's been a pretty good FCS team among others. Let's go deeper into the depth chart. What do you want to see from other players that aren't the starters in this game? Who are you most excited to see that possibly could get some gameplay in a game like this that you might not see, later on in the season?
One of the spots, I think quarterback number one, it'll be interesting to see how much they want to get Brennan Armstrong work versus maybe if this one does get out of hand, do we get to see some Ira Armstead for an extended period of time? He's a redshirt freshman. He's listed as the backup quarterback, or Jay Wolflix, a true freshman who's listed third on the depth chart. And from the way it sounds, he's got a great arm. He's a two sport guy. He's also planning to pitch for the UVA baseball team in the spring. He throws in the low 90s. And obviously, when you have that kind of arm, you're a pretty good quarterback too. So I'll be interested to see if we see him at all quarterback. And then I think the other spot I'm really interested to see is how it all shakes out at running back, because that's been one of the big questions throughout the course of this preseason. Wayne Talapapa is a senior, and he's kind of been this coaching staff's guy these last couple of years. But we all know what they're getting in Wayne Talapapa. He's a short yardage guy. He's going to keep those legs moving. He's going to churn out in those short yardage goal line kind of situations, but he's not necessarily a game breaker. So the question then becomes, Mike Hollins is a guy who opted out last year. He's back now for his second year. Ronnie Walker's back, the Indiana transfer from Richmond. We'll see how much more he joined the team midway through the season once his waiver was granted last year. We'll see how much they get him involved. And then Devin Darrington's another guy who joined the team as a grad transfer from Harvard this year. And Bronco had some good things to say about the way he's been running the ball this preseason. I think the way he phrased it was Darrington's been the most consistent runner in camp this summer. So I'm really interested to see throughout the course of the game which of those guys gets involved, who gets the carries. Hollins, we talked to him this morning, and he was talking about how the depth chart, basically what they put out on Monday, basically changes. It's pretty fluid from a day-to-day basis. If you have a bad day, you might be losing your spot, getting bumped down because that competition is so tight. So I'm really interested to see how they kind of divvy that work up and who gets the most work and how they get those guys involved and how they all look on Saturday.
Mike London coming in, obviously, this is his second time coming in against the University of Virginia, but a pretty cool storyline. The quarterback's coach for William & Mary is former UVA quarterback Matt Johns. How is that from a fan point of view? I don't know if you've talked to any fans. Obviously, Mike London's gotten an interesting track record with the team, but obviously, a former player coming back as part of the coaching staff has to be a pretty cool aspect of this game.
For sure. I mean, Matt Johns, he was Mike London's quarterback. Mike London's last year, 2015, Matt Johns started every game for Mike London. And then he came back and played. Matt Johns was a fifth-year senior for Broncos' first season. And then after that, he spent a year as a grad assistant. The 2018 season? Yeah, 2018. He was a grad assistant for Bronco. So he's obviously got some close connections to both of these staffs. He left that grad assistant job to take the full-time job on Mike London's staff at William & Mary. And there are a couple other guys on Mike London's staff at William & Mary who played at UVA. Razai Dowling, Keenan Carter, Daryl Blackstock, a couple others I'm sure I'm forgetting. Vince Brown, the defensive coordinator, he was an assistant for London when London was the head coach here in Charlottesville too. So yeah, there are obviously a lot of connections to UVA from a lot of people on that William & Mary staff. There's also Cole Blackman, one of the receivers. I think he's a seventh-year senior now, because I'm pretty sure he played for London here at UVA. I'd have to go back and check. It all kind of blends together. It's all kind of a blur. But somebody mentioned, yeah, Cole Blackman is at William & Mary now. I was like, oh, he's a grad assistant. No, he's a seventh-year receiver. He joined them in the spring last year and started all 3 games at receiver, and he's back for one more year this year. Now, on the other side of it, there aren't as many connections to the Mike London era at UVA as there were 2 years ago. There were still a lot of guys on that 2019 team who were recruited by London, a few guys who had actually played for him the last year or two of his time in Charlottesville. I remember there were a lot of guys seeking him out in that kind of scrum at midfield after that game, wanting to hug Coach London and catch up with him. A lot of guys still think really highly of him, and we're happy to see him Marcus Hagans obviously was the one holdover from Mike London's staff here at UVA, who is still on Broncos staff. He's been the wide receivers coach for a while here in Charlottesville, I think since 2013. But yeah, that's obviously a storyline. It means a lot to a lot of people. I think it might mean a lot more to some of those other guys on Mike London's staff than it does to Mike himself. Though I think he remembers fondly a lot of the guys who played for him, a lot of things that he experienced here too. So yeah, that's obviously something that on both sides of this is kind of a good storyline going into this game on Saturday night.
So ideally, obviously William & Mary brings back everyone, added a couple transfers as you touched on, Tate Hayes being maybe the biggest one, the Boston College transfer. If Brendan comes in, plays a half, has a really good day, doesn't turn the ball over, even if he had maybe an okay day, doesn't turn the ball over, you take it, you take the win. Is that a success for the University of Virginia?
I think so. I mean, how often do we see teams just maybe, they're not the most sharp on week one? I think you just want to get out of this one with a win, and you want to be healthy from a UVA perspective. You don't want to get anybody hurt. So, but yeah, absolutely. I do think you want to see some signs of progress. I think we said this last week, but we've heard all the right things from Brennan Armstrong. We've heard all the right things from other guys about Brennan Armstrong going into this game, going into this season, about the work he's put in terms of reading defenses before the snap, being able to identify what they're going to throw at him. He talked a lot about how he feels he's a lot more comfortable, more decisive, more confident in terms of maybe going to his number 2, number 3, as opposed to trying to force a throw to his primary option if it's not there. This William & Mary secondary is not it's probably the least experienced unit on their defense. It's a lot of guys who played last year in the spring, but that was only 3 games, but hadn't really played a lot prior to those 3 games in the spring. You mentioned Tate Haynes, the transfer from Boston College. I think he played maybe like 24 games at Boston College. So he's got some experience. He's got some ACC experience. But beyond that, it's not the most experienced secondary. And I'm sure UVA will test them with the variety of weapons that they want to get involved in this offense from a passing standpoint. So yeah, I think ideally you want to get out of this one with few turnovers. You want to be efficient. You want to complete, if you can complete 2/3 of your throws. And again, the biggest thing is just stay healthy, get your work in, stay healthy, get your job done. I think across the board, not just for Brennan Armstrong, but from a UVA perspective, the primary goal in this one is just to go in and handle your business. And if you do that, you should take care of your business, go out and execute as best you can and stay healthy and get ready to move on for Illinois.
Okay, let's talk about the only way this game will end up on SportsCenter. If Abilene Christian happens again with the line. So Kenny White Vegas, our pro handicapper, joins us on the Fast Lane as we record this on Wednesday, comes out on Friday, and he came on Tuesday. His mock line for this game is 33 points, the over-under 47.5. How do you see it happening? Do you have an exact score prediction? Do you think Virginia could cover all those points against William & Mary?
I think the prediction I made on the CavsCorner podcast was 48-6, which would be 42. So I guess, yeah, I would have them covering. But yeah, that's the first. What's that?
I'd have the over. I would definitely have the over in this hypothetical.
What was the over again?
47.5, which you said.
Okay, yeah. Obviously, I'm taking the over on this one as well. So, yeah, I think UVA's especially if Hollis Mathis doesn't play, and William & Mary is going to be without their top running back, Malachi Imo. He's dealing with a hamstring issue. It sounds like he's not going to play. So that's your top quarterback. Potentially, that's your number 1 running back, your speed guy at the running back spot. They do have some experience at receiver. They're getting some guys back. Zach Burdick's a big play threat at receiver. He didn't play he didn't play much in the spring. Kane Everson's another guy who had a big freshman year 2 years ago, but he didn't play in the spring. But I think the UVA defense is going to be, especially with William & Mary not being completely healthy going into this game, and maybe thinking bigger picture beyond just Saturday night at Scott Stadium, I think I'm pretty confident that UVA will take care of its business. This coaching staff got a real wake-up call. We remember with the opener against Richmond in 2016, and I think They know not to look past these games. Players, not many guys are left from that game, but its legacy kind of lingers. They know not to look past these games. So I'm pretty confident that UVA is going to go out and handle its business on Saturday night.
You heard it here from Damon Dillmon, CavsCorner.com. Damon, where can our listeners get more content from you, all the Cavaliers fans listening, as we head into the season?
Cavs Corner is where everything goes these days. We're, stories, working on some stuff later in the week. We'll have a look at the super seniors, the 5th and 6th year seniors who are back. We're going to have something coming up later in the week on Keaton Thompson, Mr. Football, as they call him at UVA, the quarterback turned Swiss Army knife, who's going to be all over the offense. Probably a big play guy for this offense this year, who I don't think I even mentioned throughout the course of this. But CavsCorner.com is the site, at Damon Dillmon on Twitter, at DAMONDILLMAN, no underscore or anything in there. And check it out.
Well, thank you so much for joining me this week, and thanks to everyone for listening. Make sure you connect with us at Fastlane Ed Lean, at TreeLileVT on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. Thank you so much for listening for this special edition of the Fast Lane.